Welcome once again here on the Regional Radio Sports Network. My name is Paul Condry. Thanks for joining us here today on the campus of Indiana University in South Bend, Indiana. Scott Cooper joining us here today alongside Nick Mullen. Well, I tell you what, I am in the minority today big time because Tanner Camp across the way producing and directing about 6'6". Nick Mullen over there, he's the tallest human being in St. Joseph County at 6'10". Scott Cooper, well, he's somewhere in between all that. And
I'm 6'6". Give me a look.
Okay, so it is what it is. So I'm thrilled. Let me sit up nice and straight to make this look something. But hey, first of all, it's that time of the year. I'm excited about it. I know tonight we'll be recording. We'll be live on the radio doing some basketball talk. But how has camp gone thus far for your group?
Oh, it's good. It's good. The guys are working hard. We got a lot of new faces this year, so we've had to go maybe a little slower than we have in the past just to make sure people are picking up concepts. But starting to see some flashes of what we're capable of being, and our attitudes are great. And a lot of times you get into this time of year, it gets kind of stale because you're playing against each other every single day, and we're constantly throwing new concepts at them and things like that. But these guys have done a really good job of, bringing their energy every single day, and in most cases they're focused.
I have a couple new guys on my staff, and one of the things that there's always a gap, Scott, in that is terminology. So my terminology for stuff, or nicknames, or alphabet soup as we call them in our place, I have an abbreviation for everything. You know that because when I sign my name, I sign a PRC.
Yeah.
And so there's a terminology. There's always a little bit of a gap in a learning curve. Can you speak to what it's like when you bring a new recruit in on terminology? Now I know basketball terminology is, it's probably the same around the world, but what you may call something, some other coach, their high school coach may have called it something else. Can you talk about shrinking the gap, if you will, in the communication department for the new guys?
That's something we're really big on here, and we kind of create our own language so that we're not using the same terms that everybody else is. Matter of fact, we renamed one of our actions that we run this year entirely because everybody else started calling it the same thing. It's not like it was an original thought on my end, but yeah, we have names for everything, and I think Nick can attest to this. Some of them are people names for certain things. Some of them are just random words. There's no rhyme or reason to a lot of it, but other than it's easy to say quickly and we can communicate quickly. But we're really big on teaching communication and being precise in our communication. These guys get excited on Fridays. We play catchphrase, a little handheld game that they, have to work on, and how they communicate quickly, more effectively. And it was really fun. Last year was the first year we did it, and early in the year the guys are all terrible at it, and by the end of the year, it gets pretty intense, and they get pretty confident in how they can play the game. And, for anybody who's ever played it, I won't try to go into all the terrible strategies they have, but it's fun to see them do that, and I think it really carried over to the floor well for us.
A lot of this stuff comes to the forefront because what you call an offensive or defensive scheme, and I think we see it probably more in football than we do than anything else. And Peyton Manning made it famous by the use of the word Omaha as he was coming to the line of scrimmage when he was the quarterback of the Colts, and so everybody kind of got used to that, and they knew what the play was going to be at some point in time. So do you think your opponents at some point in time understand when they hear, because if they see or pick up your voice or somebody else's voice on tape during the course of the game, they may know what particular play or defensive scheme or some particular set that you're going to run. So do you try to stay away from those kind of things, or is it maybe just holding up a fist or holding up a couple numbers from a communication? How do you keep that away from your opponents?
I don't even try. I'll be honest with you. Everything's on film now and all that stuff. And the thing we always tell these guys is if they communicate quickly and clearly, we do it enough that we know where you're going to run. The other people are going to know run, but the other people are going to have to think about it, and that's going to make them slower. So, I think like if you ask Mike McBride, for example, I'll guarantee you he could tell you every single thing that we do, and without having to put any thought into it. But he's got to relay that to his players, and they've got 2 days to prepare or whatever like that, and they might know it pretty well because he's a very good coach. But they're going to have to think about it, and so our guys are going to be reactive to it and things like that. And so we've got a zone defense that we occasionally run that Nick kind of anchors the communication on that, and he's constantly yelling out different calls for ways guys are supposed to slide and things like that. And when we do it enough, and those guys can just react to what he's saying, pretty quickly. Whereas the other team's going to be, they're going to know that we're coming up on this way, but they're going to have to think about, I'm going to have Nick Mullen guard me now. I'm going to have Jalen Petty guard me now based on all that. And that slows people down is ultimately what we're hoping. It's not to say it's a perfect world, but, we don't call out lots of plays or anything like that. We kind of just react to things, and, these guys, the way they communicate and the way they're spaced kind of triggers everything else.
We're going to bring in now the pride of Chesterton High School, and we're going to bring in Nick Mullen here. Nick, first of all, let's talk about communication. Like you've been listening to our dialogue there. What was it like from making the jump from school A to school B to school C, and to you get into that mindset from the time you're a little guy, what's being taught at the middle school level to the high school level to the college level? You think there was a big gap from a communication standpoint at this stage? What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I think especially for the jump from high school to college. High school, a lot of coaches just tell you got to talk about everything, but at college you kind of simplify it more, and Coop does a good job of that, of saying you need to keep your language short and concise to be able to effectively tell somebody exactly what they're going to do instead of just talking to talk. Having a purpose behind all communication is what is most important.
You grew up in the league that I grew up in, because I grew up, Hobart was in the Duneland Conference back in my day, and of course I grew up in that league and watched coaches watch some great players in that league. And it's it's a great football league, I would say, but the basketball doesn't have to take a back seat to anybody. Give us an idea what it was like being in the competitive situations that you were in the Duneland Conference. Did it make you tough enough to be able to come to the college level and play?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was a big thing, is being able to play against a bunch of good teams with a lot of great players on those teams, not necessarily always being the best team in the conference, kind of competing for the top and not just running the conference, is something that translated big time to college.
One of the things that we talked to Burnett and Petty about was the coaching, and because we recently just celebrated National Coaches Day, so I'd like for you to take me back to your earliest time of getting involved in sports and your coaches along the way that have mentored you. So I want you to take me back to the youth league sports and talk about all the coaches along the way that have influenced you and mentored you along the way.
Yeah, so I started out when I was a kid. Obviously, I feel like a lot of kids had this experience, but my dad coached me for mostly everything. I played baseball and basketball and soccer and whatever. And so he coached me. I did, yeah, a long time ago. And so he coached me most of the way through then. And then once I got to high school, I had a freshman basketball coach, T.R. Harlan. He was a good coach. And then I had a couple more. I had a volleyball coach, Craig Cromwell. He was a great guy, great coach. He coached at Valpo University also. Then Coach Mark Urban, another great coach. And then that was for 3 years in high school. And then Coach Cooper, obviously, now, which I feel like is pretty rare, but I've been fortunate enough to not ever really have a coach that I would say is a bad coach. Obviously, some do things a lot differently. Like Coach Cooper and Coach Urban are completely different people, but they're both still great coaches. So it just goes to show that there's a lot of different ways to accomplish something, and you can go either way with it.
Yeah, I think the case in point, Coop, is, and I'm going to ask you that same question, because there's been a lot of guys along the way, coaches who you've played for, who you have worked for, and now who you can still get a chance to work with, and one being right down the hallway and Coach Bruce. But having said that, to Nick's point, case in point, many people feel that John Wooden is, quote-unquote, the greatest basketball coach of its day, and he was a guy that sat in such a stoic position on the bench with his program all rolled up. And then there's guys that patrolled the sidelines right here in this state, and Bob Knight, who was probably just the opposite. So to Nick's point, you can do things a different way and still be successful.
Oh, yeah, and I think you have to, too. I think that so much of it, I worked for a guy named Greg Zimmerman down when I was at Alderson Broadus as an assistant coach who, he would cuss you out and swear at you the whole time, but he's one of the best coaches I ever worked for, and he just passed away recently, actually. But, he had his way of doing that, and then, the two jobs sandwiched around that. I worked for very, very laid-back guys, and Rob Clune at my alma mater and at Allegheny College, and then Mike DeWitt at Ohio Wesleyan University are all all three of them were very successful coaches, and I mean, personality types couldn't be more different. You could go a whole day and not hear Mike DeWitt say a word in practice sometimes, and that was, he just would delegate a lot to his assistant coaches, and then when the games you be a lot more intense and things like that. But yeah, everybody's got their own way of doing things, and as long as you're true to your personality and authentic to your personality, I think it works. And the very first guy I ever worked for in coaching was a guy named Jay Murphy, who was one of the most organized type A personalities I've ever met in my life. Like, if I used to mess with him a little bit because his office was just so neat that he had a pin set on his desk that I would kind of just change the angle of it, and it would drive him insane. And that's how he was. And then the next guy I worked for, in Rob Clune, you couldn't see his desk because it was covered in papers from before he even coached there. So yeah, but all of them were really good coaches, and all of them had different strengths, and I was very fortunate to work for them. And then growing up, I again, kind of like to Nick's point, I was very fortunate to work for a lot of people that, like when I started out, my elementary school coach was a guy named Keith Boyle, who just made it fun for me. Like, I just enjoyed basketball, and and then going up all the way through, I had assistant coaches who were great, and a guy named Doug DeVault, who was more of a football coach. Matter of fact, he won a state championship at Orville High School, speaking of Bobby Knight, his alma mater, as the head football coach there. Yeah, he won a state championship. He was my assistant coach in college, in high school, and he opened up the weight room for me all day if I couldn't steal my dad's keys. A guy named Mike McCreary, was the same thing for me. He was a bigger guy, would just come in and beat on me all day. And my high school coach had 3 kids who were all very good players, and they kind of tagged me along all the way through growing up, and really helped my development there. So I mean, just to have people like that cared about you in some way, shape, or form, and can contribute in the ways that they can contribute, I think led to just not a even basketball experience, but just making my experience as a human being better. Because you just had people outside of your own family that cared.
All right, let's talk about 425. It's a unique group that you have, having to replace one of the premier players in not only in the NEI but also in the league. And when you look at the numbers, and they're crazy, what Dejan Barney was able to accomplish: 19 points, about 10 rebounds per game, all-league performer, a guy that really defensively created so many problems because he owned the lane. I mean, his ability to just change the flight of the ball. For anybody to think he's going to take it in there, I mean, it's so unique talent. But you have to replace a guy like that. That, first of all, that's not easy. And now you may be able to move some people in, and you've got 4 or 5 new kids coming in. So let's talk about the landscape of this year's group.
Yeah, it's a lot of new faces, and that's one of the things we talked about in our first meeting. Is Nick and Deshaun are, we won the league in 2023. They're the only 2 guys that are still left from that team, because we graduated 8 guys in the last 2 years, and then I had 1 guy who transferred out. So there's not a lot of veteran guys that have been there and done that we've had so many of the last few years. But having said that, I think we're pretty talented, and we've got we got a set of skill sets that complement each other well, I think, which is exciting. So, guys are going to have to play different roles. Like Nick, is obviously going to have to fill in, in a lot more of a scoring role than he did last year, a playmaking role, a decision-making role, and that sort of thing. So we have to play a little bit differently to his strengths that were, different than Dejan's strengths. Guys like Deshaun Burnett and Jalen that you had on earlier, Quintez Columbus, are definitely going to have to step up into different, kind of roles and stuff like that. But we've got some guys, I think, that didn't get to play a whole lot last year on our roster that are ready now too, and the 3 that kind of stand out that were here last year, they got a little bit of playing time. We had some injuries, or Drew Hedgepeth and AJ Dunn and Kyle Olabegi have all made big steps forward, and I'm excited to see what they can do this year. I think all of them have something to contribute for us. And then we added a couple of guys, and Kyle Millender, who played for a great JUCO program over at Macomb Community College, who they were national runner-up his first year there, and then last year we're a national tournament team, won their conference in both years, and he was a big contributor to that group. And added a guy named Sean Brown from Santa Heights, who also played at Macomb there the first year when they were a national runner-up, who's kind of a late bloomer who has shown some flashes of what he's capable of too, that can step up into bigger roles. And then, we got a couple of freshmen that I think eventually are going to be really good. One in Colin Schmidt and Mark White, who again are both kind of showing some flashes here and there, and then both have their freshman moments like everybody does because they're learning a lot of new things. But expecting them to be really good players for us down the line. And I certainly don't want to leave out Cole Blasco, who's been here, and James York, who've been here for the last couple of years from Berrien Springs, that really bring it every single day, and again are definitely making us better. And I think the group, and Nick can probably speak to this better than I can, but I think the group seems to be gelling pretty well off the court, which is always a good thing to see, because that kind of, when you get into the tough times, or you get into the doldrums of January and stuff like that, that stuff kind of gets you through those times. And I'm looking forward to it.
Speaking of late bloomers, Nick is the ultimate late bloomer. You didn't even know you were going to do this college basketball thing, did you?
No, not at all.
And now here you are. So give us an idea, as you look at the landscape of this team, compare this to some of the teams you've played on in the past, where do you think this group is at?
I think it goes back to what I was saying before, is there's a bunch of different ways to do the right thing. Like, I think we can still be just as good as we've been in the past, but it's going to be a lot different. Obviously, we don't have Dejan, who is an unbelievable post scorer and an unbelievable player in general. Like, we're not going to be able to replace that, but we can change it so that we can still be effective in what we do. And I think also what Coop said is very true about the team gelling off the court, is we all get along great. Like, it's really good vibes off the court and on the court, but that's something that's very important to when we get into the meat of the season. And nobody, like, if you don't have a good off the court energy, like, nobody wants to be there, so it kind of helps go back to that. And then I just think we have a lot of potential. Obviously, we got some new guys that are coming in and learning, and we're going to have some young contributors too, I think, like the sophomores you're talking about, AJ and Kyle and Drew. They're all great players. So I think we got a lot of potential, and once we figure it out, I think we'll be a great team.
A couple things. In talking with Jalen and Deshaun Burnett earlier, I look at their conversation, and this was filmed before I talked to you, but they brought up two really good points. One of the things that Petty said to me was that, because I asked him flat out, hey, listen, we're going to have a good year if this happens. And Petty told me flat out that, hey, we need to finish games better. He said we lost 4 or 5 games where that had we had done what we needed to do, we would have been more successful. We would have won more games. Do you feel that is the situation coming into this season, that you can win those close games?
Yes, I really do think that. I think there were plenty of mistakes we made at the end of games sometimes where it's just, like, that stuff happens, but as long as we learn from it, I think we can finish those games and then have those wins, and who knows, maybe end of our season is different.
Good. What's your take on that? I mean, that's one of your senior guys just saying, hey, listen, we need to be better here, and this is why.
Yeah, and that was a problem for us early in the year last year. We lost a close one to Shawnee State there at the buzzer. We lost a close one to Bethel where we turned it over a bunch at the end. We lost a close one to Cornerstone. Like, any one of those 3 wins, and we're in the national tournament last year. And we obviously got a lot better at it as the year went on. But I think that's one of the challenges of having a lot of new people in those situations is a lot of them haven't been in those situations before, and they haven't been in those situations together before. So you saw like yesterday we were working on situational stuff, and one guy's doing his thing and the next guy's doing his thing. Like, we're going to struggle with that probably a little bit early in the year for the same reasons. But can we make the same growth that we did last year? And just how fast do we make it? Last year we kind of had it figured out by November. By the end of November. So we were in really good shape. If we can do that again, we're probably in really good shape again. If it takes us longer than that, then, that could, that might be the difference between finishing at the top of the league again or finishing in the middle of the pack. And, we're playing a really challenging schedule again. And, like I said, I think we do have the talent to play with those teams. But at the same time, some of them are coming in with a much more established product. And whereas we're fitting in a lot of new pieces. And, how quickly do we figure the stuff out that Nick's talking about there that may determine difference between a 3-point win or a 3-point loss.
Nick, let me give you the open-ended question I gave to your senior teammates. The Titans are going to improve on that 22-9 record and are going to have a better season overall if we can do these things. Fill in the blanks.
I would say top of the list is finish games better than we did last year, and the second thing I want to say is keep our defense elite. Like, our defense has been elite the past couple of years, and I'm a big believer in defenses determines if you win the games, offense determines by how much. Like, if we can figure out our defense, we're going to be just fine.
Coop raised his eyebrows. You're talking about defense. Is he ready to step up defensively, Coop? What do you think?
That's all we ever talk about here. I'd say our offense gets a lot of the press, but it's really been our defense that's won it. So much for us the last 5 years. And you look at
to your case in point, 69 points a game. That's pretty good defensively at the college level.
Yeah, we were fifth in the country in defensive efficiency last year, so it wasn't a mistake. We've been very, very good at that end of the floor for a while now. But I raised my eyes because I like the quote. I've never heard it said that way before. But you even take it back to that first championship year that we won. I should say that in 1920, I think we were second in the conference behind Holy Cross, and it was by a tenth of a point or something like that. It wasn't very much, and especially the last 3 years, we've really been up there, and some of it. Again, last year was a slow start, and just it was finishing games was a slow start defensively, but at the back line we had 6'9" and 6'10" guys that were blocking shots all over the place. That Nick set the school record, I think, in back-to-back games at one point or another there, and by the end of the year he wasn't getting any block shots because people weren't getting near the hoop, so it wasn't that he got worse at it suddenly. It was that we got better in other areas, and I think that growth is again taking it back to last year is what we're going to need this year if we're going to continue to compete at the level we've been competing at.
All right, let me give you a final question. Nick, Chicagoland Collegiate Athletic Conference, who's the team to beat?
I would say IUN. They're the ones that they took us down in 2 in a row last year. They beat us in the conference championship. I think they're returning a lot of guys, so I think that's the team for us to beat at least.
Okay. Coop, how about you? What's your overall, the landscape of the CCAC?
Yeah, I give them a lot of credit. I think that it's the first team we've lost to twice in a season in 6 or 7 years or something like that. And they've got a lot back. They lost some of their bench, but their whole starting five's back. And that was a really good group when they came together. So I would say they're probably the team that we're all chasing this year. But I think we'll have a chance. I think we'll be in the mix. It just, like I said, it just depends on how quickly we can get all the pieces together.
I like Jalen Petty's answer better. He said the Titans are the team to beat.
Yeah, he's far less diplomatic than we are, but
exactly. That's going to do it from our broadcast location at the Student Activity Center here on the campus of Indiana University in South Bend, Indiana. I'm Paul Condry for Coach Cooper and for soon-to-be Coach Nick Mullen. With that kind of verbiage, we got to get him on staff here. The way he's showing up here today. Thanks for joining us. For Tanner Camp, I'm Paul Condry.